Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 172.
You are listening to Let's Be Well Together podcast. It's John here with Riley Thompson. Hi, Riley.
Hi, John.
I've been working on a theory, and I may have mentioned it on the show already, and I want to say a little bit more about it. But before I do, I want to try and get some context. And so I'm going to try and pick your brain and see if I can get an example of something before I pipe in with my theory. Is that okay?
That works.
It relates to both doing something that you really enjoy, something that's maybe not easy, like maybe it's some form of art or a profession, like fixing a motorcycle, like in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, because that's kind of where this comes from. Or something, but something that you have to have building blocks for first before you get pretty good at it. And then you get to a point where you feel like you can almost pursue excellence in it. So the question is, can you think of any kind of activity you've been involved with that kind of lines up with that?
Yeah. I mean, growing up, there's a handful of things. Like I was one of those kids where my mom put me in a bunch of different things just to kind of put the feelers out there. I did dance, I did piano. Piano was probably the best example of what you were talking about in terms of it being like a foreign language when I started, to then learning how to read sheet music and knowing how to play songs at a moment's notice without needing to refer to any sheet music or anything.
So kind of how long did you end up playing?
I think I only played piano for a few years maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, back when I was like probably 14, 15.
All right. Well, and part of my theory has to do with building blocks, and it does relate to the whole theory of wellness too, that I'll say a little bit about. But so you're starting to take piano, and you have to try and remember. I don't know if I could remember back that far myself because I'm a little older. But what were some of like the building block things you had to do before you could start getting competent at piano?
Well, being taught piano by some witchy old woman outside of our house, that was a pretty big building block. Yeah, I mean, taking an interest, I think obviously is part of it. It's kind of hard to get far in anything without being interested in it.
What were the actual like mechanical skills you had to do with fingers and notes and stuff like that?
Yeah, you'd learn the keys. So the range of, what is C to G, I think? Oh God, it's been so long. C to G, so you'd learn all the keys, kind of the sound they make, the sounds they can make together. Then you would learn the chords, chord progressions, octaves, so the difference between a C in the middle of the keyboard versus a C at the end of the keyboard, that kind of thing. And then from there you would learn reading sheet music, so then you can understand what the notes on the paper correspond to which key on the keyboard. From there, I guess it's pretty much history, because as soon as you know how to read sheet music, you can pretty much play anything.
But I'm sure it doesn't go directly from learning the keys to reading sheet music. There's probably a lot of little steps along the way.
Yeah, stretching your hands would be one of them, because if anyone knows me, you know I have tiny little hands, and stretching them across a keyboard can be very tedious and cumbersome. So warming up, practicing, learning your way around the keyboard, getting familiar with it, and the pressure of the keyboard. Some keyboards, like an actual grand piano takes a lot more force to play the keys than an electric keyboard does. Yeah, just some of those little things that you wouldn't really think of.
And eventually, did you get to the point where you felt like you could just let it play instead of, so it's like, I take it at some point you're like looking at the notes, playing the notes, you're, kind of mechanical, but did you ever get to the point where you could just kind of let yourself go and play?
Yeah, a lot of people talk about, especially when you're learning a new job, like repetition is how you learn, especially with instruments. You're not just going to practice it once and get it the first try. Like even just the other day, I was trying to pick back up piano. I don't really remember how to read sheet music like I used to, but just learning to put my hands on the keyboard felt very alien compared to how it used to. But I remember when I was a kid, there's videos of me playing piano and I'm just like whipping around all over the place, because once you practice a song over and over and over, or certain chords or certain little tidbits of the song, your hands get used to the movement, and melody helps, and tempo and all those different things.
I'm kind of lucky because I had a great experience. My daughter took piano, Elise. I remember she was really good at it. And I would come home and I could hear her playing because we had a piano in the house. And everything sounded just right. Like it did sound just right. But then all of a sudden I'd come home and now it was just right. But it was almost like she was adding kind of emotion to things. She got to the point where, and she didn't even hear it herself because I would say something to her and she's like, I'm just playing my music. But I could tell that she got to the point where it was becoming more and more magical, and it was so cool to hear that. But anyway, like the reason I mention that is because, the basic part in terms of the theory. So the theory is my approach to wellness is first try and figure out the categories that are important to you and then figure out the activities that can foster wellness. And then when you're feeling off, check in. But I take all those activities built in with each activity. So let's say you want to do something to enhance your financial wellness. There's an activity like budgeting or whatever. Any one of these activities you pick probably has a big bunch of building block activities that you need to get good at before you're good at the activity itself. So that's,
I think it's interesting to kind of break that down. Even you're not just looking at budgeting, you're looking at what it takes to budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Before you can do a budget, you have to figure out what expenses you have to keep track of and which ones are every week, which ones are every month, which ones are over the course of the year, which ones you have no control over, like cable bill versus which ones you do, like how many groceries you buy. But meanwhile, lately I've been thinking a lot more about stuff, and this all kind of springs from having read the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing. It's a long book for kind of a point that I took out of it that has to do with, and what happened in that book was it's a person who is thinking about what is quality. Like, how do you do something with quality? And lots of things happen, but skipping forward then to how I'm taking it, it occurs to me that if you find something that you really enjoy doing, maybe it's piano, and you start developing all those building blocks, that is a really neat pursuit in itself, just doing the building blocks. And then especially if you get to the point where now you understand all the building blocks and now it's just flowing and you've been able to pursue something with excellence, you get to a spot where you can express yourself in that way and just be at this really great state, this really wonderful state. I read an article the other day, just the headline actually, and it essentially said that people who search for happiness tend to be unhappy. Like essentially what it was saying is if your focus is how do I make myself happy, and you're kind of always wondering if you are happy or how do you get happy, that's not the greatest thing to do. And also tie into my approach to life, which is stop trying to be happy and live your life, right? So if we live our lives and we do an action-based approach to wellness, we're doing activities that foster wellness in an intentional way, like what activities can I do that foster wellness and whatnot. In that whole context, if I can luckily find something where I can pursue excellence, I really think I have a good chance of being well in that pursuit.
Well, it's actually really interesting too. When you think of pursuing something, like I can't help but think of work. Like people want to be good at their job. People want to be good at what they do. And in my undergrad, we talked about a concept called the flow state, which is basically pursuing something to the point of being so good at it that you enter a certain state of mind, like an artist, for example. I'll cut myself off and talk about an artist because that was the example that was used in school, was that artists, when they work, they're in their own state of mind. They work at their own pace. They enjoy what they're doing. They work for hours on end without needing water, without food, without going to the washroom, without even recognizing that the sun has set. That's because of the flow state that they've entered a point of, I guess, maybe not even being good at what they do, but they just enjoy it so much to the point of just nothing else matters.
Yeah,
complete satisfaction.
That's exactly, it's interesting because that's exactly what I'm trying to get at. And the flow state is the perfect way to describe it. Now, I don't necessarily agree that you don't sleep or eat or any of that stuff, but...
Well, that was just the artist.
But exactly. And my point is that's a really great example of how if we pursue excellence in life in different forms, that we get into a flow state, which I'm going to suggest is a pretty good place to be from a well-being perspective.
Yeah, there was I can't remember the exact statistics behind it, but it was proven that something like being in the flow state is attributed to a more positive sense of well-being, and more people who experience the flow state experience more of a sense of purpose.
Exactly. And I think then, so that just to kind of tie it all up, it's really worth it to find something that might be your thing, or many things. Have a well-rounded life and find many things that you enjoy pursuing excellence in. Understand that it's worth going through those clunky early days of hitting the keys and getting the building blocks, and things aren't perfect, because if you keep doing that, you're heading towards this flow state, which is a pretty good place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of physical wellness, and we welcome back the author of the book Built to Last, David Amerland. David was a recent guest, and today we'll talk about sustainable health practice. Hi, David.
Hi, John. It's great to be here.
David Amerland writes about how we grow stronger physically, mentally, and emotionally in his books like Built to Last and The Sniper Mind. He blends neuroscience, fitness, and personal development into clear, actionable frameworks. He's got a black belt in martial arts, and David draws from his training to explore motivation, resilience, and the power of movement to transform lives. He also writes on tech and strategy, including Google semantic search, helping professionals adapt in the digital age. Whether through writing or speaking, his goal is the same: to help people gain control of their lives, improve their health, and build habits that truly last. So, David, on our podcast, we often talk about and emphasize sustainable exercise over, for example, pushing ourselves the hardest. We also talk about eating healthy forever rather than dieting. It's great that in your book you talk about sustainable health practices, and I'd love to talk to you about that. So for you, I think you say sustainability starts with feeling good. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity of this. It's an important subject. Now, essentially, we all know that we need to exercise. And once we accept it, both emotionally and intellectually, then we begin to go about it. And this is where it becomes tricky, because exercise is a stressor, and we are hardwired to avoid stressors. So we tend to fight against ourselves, and usually we think, okay, I can do this. If I can blast it out for the next 3 weeks, it becomes a habit, which is wrong, right? Because we have statistics. It does not, especially when it comes to exercise.
I think what you're saying, for example, is like we'll see a program, for example, offered that's like 3 weeks of intensive workout, and that's going to get you going. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, anything like that is not going to do anything of what it actually promises. Sure, you will feel discomfort. Sure, you will feel different, and definitely you'll see some changes. Let's not, because you're going to do the work. But it is not necessarily a healthy way of approaching health, and certainly it's not a healthy way of approaching fitness. And at some point, we need to also separate these two, right? We can get Olympian athletes or anybody involved in high-level, elite-level sports. They're definitely fit. They're not necessarily healthy. And I know this for a fact, right? I was competing for a number of years. I was putting my body through incredible stuff day after day. Was I fitter than now? Absolutely. Was I healthier? No, I wasn't. Okay, I was stressed. I was underfed, underfueled. My body hadn't enough time to recover. And the only thing that keeps you on a sort of level is the fact that everybody else around you're competing against is pretty much in the same sort of boat. So they're feeling the same. They're working with the same handicaps. When it comes to fitness, especially if we want to make it lifelong fitness, it will actually help us be active and physically and mentally fit in our older years. There has to be a level of sustainability which will allow us to do it day after day. And if we're going to be physical every single day, we can't have the same intensity. We can't approach it as the key that's going to unlock our inner demons and release them, because that's wrong. That's just inner anger directed at ourselves through the form of exercise, which is not healthy. So find what you do. Find something that you like. If you like walking, go with that. Start with that. Actually make it a sustainable activity that you do every day for X number of minutes, whatever those minutes are. If it's an hour, if it's 20 minutes, it's 15 minutes, however you start. It has to be easy, because exercise itself is hard. So if you also make it harder by saying, okay, I need to have the right gear, the right group, the right weather, do it for the right length of time, has to feel, all those things are obstacles. So let's remove those obstacles. Let's start with a feel good factor. Do what feels easy, do what feels good, and build gradually from there. And that's what sustainability is all about. This is what being kind to ourselves is partially about. And there's a lot of other elements to that.
And we often hear that showing up is important. That's a really great approach. Why do you see that as your rule number one?
We know now for a fact that consistency beats intensity. Whatever your goal is, do you want to lose weight? Do you want to get stronger? Do you want to have bigger muscles? Whatever it is. Essentially, you're relying on a signal which needs to be sent from the stimulus that your body undergoes to your brain, which will assess it, evaluate it, and then send another signal throughout your body, which will say, hey, let's allocate resources now to do this thing, whatever this thing is. Grow our muscles, increase our endurance, increase our VO2 capacity, which means more capillaries throughout the body, lower blood pressure, have lower base heartbeat resting rate. All those things, right? All those things are energetically expensive, and the body is not going to do them if it doesn't feel it's absolutely necessary. And it's not about health and fitness for the body, it's about survival. So it feels that it's an environment, day after day, which necessitates those changes. So if we do it daily, the signal is stronger. If we do it 2-3 times a week, certainly it's better than nothing, but the signal is weaker. If we think that we're going to go harder in those 2-3 times a week, well, it's still 2-3 times a week. Well, sure, the signal is there, but it's not every day. So it's about convincing our body to undertake those changes. And the best way to do it is by being consistent in what we do, rather than having the kind of intensity that exhausts us day after day.
I recently had experience. I've done a really good job in the last, say, 8 months. I got back into a better routine of being out more often. And I was including a day of a little high intensity run and another day with the hills and another day of a long run. And then I got a cold and I fell off it. Now I made sure I still went out and ran at least once a week, but I had fallen off the more regular routine, and boy, do I ever feel it. So I'm starting to get it back, but I really feel what you're talking about in the sense that my body did kind of drop off on some of the things that it had built up internally because of the regular routine. And I take an approach where I'm not trying to knock myself out. I am just kind of showing up. It's made a big difference.
Yeah. Good.
Another thing,
it's important to have, again, your experience is not unique. All of us at some point, myself included, okay, I have a very sort of carefully worked out plan where I train every day. And there are days when I won't be able to stick to it. But I have a backup plan for that. And I have a backup plan to my backup plan. So I will always do something. And what that does essentially is it sends a signal to the body that says, hey, you know those expensive muscles you built? Okay, you didn't train them for 2 days. But it doesn't mean you still don't need them, because other things happen which tell you, hey, hold on to them. So that consistency is key really to maintaining the gains you make and also setting you up for future gains.
Can you give me an example? Like when you say a backup plan, maybe just give us one example of what that might look like.
I usually train 2 hours a day. I train an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, and I do different things in those days. But there are days when I know that my day is going to be busy. I won't have time to do those 2 hours. And I have a 15-20 minute workout, which again, I've carefully worked out. But there are days, and today is one of those days, when I don't have the time for that. And what I've done in that day, I've got 1 minute workout. I mean, this is what I did in the morning before I hit the shower. I did 50 push-ups and I did 50 squats. And because I've done it all my life in terms of those activities, for that, it takes me 2 minutes. So I did 2 minutes of exercise. And that sent a signal to my body from a hormonal point of view that, hey, your body's worked out, it needs to maintain those gains. So it didn't do what it normally does, but the muscles are needed. So I don't have to worry about, I'm losing ground, I'm losing my fitness, which is anxiety, right? And anxiety increases our internal toxicity. And that makes us feel even more anxious on top of the stress that we face in the day. And that has a very negative impact on all internal organs, on our fitness, on our muscles. We have now figures that you get too stressed, you lose muscle. So I don't have to worry about that. And this is my plan for the day. And if I run so busy or so short of time that I don't have time even for that, I will do something really basic, like, I'll find a minute and I'll do 30-40 push-ups. Again, I'm sending the signal to the body. We know from a neurochemical perspective that 1 minute of exercise neurochemically changes the bloodstream to the same degree that an hour of exercise would. So essentially, my body sends a signal to all my major organs that things are a go, just as if I had trained for an hour and then trained for a minute. So that gives me the confidence, I don't get anxious if I miss a day of exercise or even 2-3 days. I don't tend to feel that I failed, which comes with its own kind of set of negative thoughts and feelings. I don't feel that I'm not doing enough. And by having those personal strategies, it allows me to constantly be positive and focus on the future and feel that I'm doing things.
I know for me too, the other thing, the old me too, if I was on a routine and I missed like 2 or 3 days, I would quit. Oh, that's it. I can't do it anymore. So I like the idea of the backup plan and the backup to the backup plan, because you never actually quit. You're always doing something, and it keeps you going. Now, you also talk about the scarcity trap. I like this because we were recently talking to someone on a different point about ethics and moral theories. And, one thing we noticed was that a lot of, when you're talking about ethics, a lot of it's don't do this, don't do that. It's all like negative, where kind of a better approach that we liked was to try and do things and be positive and improve your life and grow and become an excellent person. So why do you say we should focus on what we can do and not focus on what we lack?
The same reason that we have to have the same approach on ethics, which is absolutely sound, the conversation you had. Doing something, whether it's ethics or exercise, is energetically difficult. It takes us out of our comfort zone, mentally, psychologically, physically, when it comes to exercise, and demands of us to do things which we're not used to do them to a degree we're not used to doing them, and basically feel the stress, which creates adaptive response for the body, which in exercise will make us fitter, in ethics will make us more moral and righteous, and so on. Because these things are difficult, we tend to normally create obstacles by focusing on things we don't have when it comes to actually doing them. So, if I say, I need to get to the gym because I understand I need to get fitter. My nearest gym is 5 miles away. Now I've got to, how am I going to get there? If it's raining, I haven't got a car, I'm not going to negotiate the weather, for instance, right? Or if it is raining, if I do have a car, I'm not going to find a parking space because everybody else takes their vehicles. So we tend to focus on the things which actually stop us from doing what we need to do, as opposed to asking, okay, what is it I actually can do, which doesn't cost me so much? Can I do some push-ups at home, for instance? Can I help my next door neighbor in something which, it's a decision which will help me feel righteous and better about the world? These small acts, which energetically don't cost a lot, they're small steps, tend to build up and build up and build up. And then we change internally and we go on to slightly bigger ones and slightly bigger ones. And gradually, without realizing, we actually find that we have progressed a lot more than we ever expected.
So part of it sounds like it's, because it is so easy. I mean, I've done this a few times in the last couple of weeks. It's mixed weather right now where I am. And so one day it was really cold and rainy, and I didn't go out for my run, and I didn't feel like going to the gym because I still would have had to walk through the rain. So one part of it is stop doing that, stop finding the negatives. But I think the other thing is look for opportunities to find positives. Like even if it's not going to the gym, you're saying maybe help your neighbor with something just because that opportunity is there and you're getting some movement in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, say, you don't want to exercise for whatever reason. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay. Does your house need cleaning? That's exercise. You're actually being physically active and you're cleaning your house. Do that. Put on a pair of headphones and just get to cleaning the kitchen, the bathroom, dusting all the furniture. And that's quite a workout. Okay, so you get pretty tired doing that. You've actually worked out and you feel good about it and you have a clean house on top of that. So it's just being smart. If we always focus on what is it we can actually do right now, as opposed to, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do that, I haven't got the resources for this, I haven't got the time for that, I haven't got the inclination right now to do something really hard and difficult. Perfect. We're all in the same boat when it comes to these things. Let's start with what can you actually do and do that.
It's productive because it's combining kind of the backup plan, not going to the gym, and incorporating movement into daily life. So it's something that I think is really reachable for anybody.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, you also talk about the pillars of long-term health. So tell me a little bit about what you see as the pillars.
Well, this is what we need in order to be physically healthy, mentally capable, psychologically adaptive, and feel happy in ourselves. We need to have some kind of exercise in our life. And it doesn't have to be formal exercise as long as it's physical movement. We need to have good nutrition because essentially our body is made up by the stuff we actually put in it. We need to have decent sleep, and we're talking about quality of sleep. Sure, we may not be able to get 8 hours, but if we get 6 or 7 good hours, so we actually go into deep sleep and the body goes into repair mode and building mode, this is good. So the quality of sleep is important. So we need those 3 things. And then we need the social element. And we know for a fact there are 5 blue zones in the world. The blue zones is a name given to areas of the world where people live long and healthy lives. And those blue zones have these things in common. Although they are geographically diverse and they're culturally diverse, different languages, different types of food even, different types of exercise in their lives, they are generally not socioeconomically wealthy areas. And they all have the one consistent factor that unites them, a strong social element. People tend to know each other, they tend to socialize. And this doesn't mean they don't have stress in their lives, they have a lot of stress. But we know that by socializing, we tend to normalize the level of stress we feel inside us because our brain adjusts when it comes in contact with other brains. And belonging to something makes us feel less alone, more capable, less sort of targeted by the universe, let's put it this way, in whatever misfortune we happen to encounter. And that only has positive impact in our internal world, which is then expressed over a number of years in longevity, good health. You know, as people age, and they age gracefully, which is amazing. And that's what we should actually aspire to. In our modern world, we tend to forget these things. And certainly we forget the social element. We're in a loneliness epidemic worldwide.
Okay, well, just a couple of points before I turn to the question I ask every guest. So first of all, it's really interesting that you say sleep, nutrition, exercise, social connection. When I talk about kind of the pillars of physical health, I'm talking about the same thing, sleep and nutrition and exercise. And secondly, just for people who don't really know a lot about blue zones, just for some context, a lot of scientists were trying to figure out how we can improve longevity. Like what can I put into the body and what can I do? And then someone said, hey, wait a minute, why don't we go around the world and look at places where people do live longer and see what they do instead of us trying to kind of manufacture it. And apparently, I guess they started circling them with blue, and that's why they're called blue zones. Right. And so what David is talking about is the common features of people who live in areas who just historically and naturally tend to live longer than people in other areas. So it's really interesting stuff. So David, as you know from the last time, we ask every guest the same question in a context where we all have many areas of wellness that are important to us, but not enough time to focus on all of them at any given time. So we do our mini wellness check-in. So how about today? Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing you could do to foster wellness in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. We only have so much energy to actually devote to what we do each day. And at the moment, and when we actually add new things to that, it's impossible to have everything, something must go. And at the moment, I had a choice in terms of what I'm doing between social connections and exercise. So exercise is simply easier to keep than social connections. They take too much energy right now. So my sort of outgoing agenda has been truncated to the extreme. So I'm not going out very much. I'm not meeting with friends. I don't even see family very much at the moment. It's temporary.
It's funny too, because I'm an introvert. And I often forget the social connections. And I've had several guests recently talking about that. And I keep saying that I'm going to do better to have social connections, but I need to kind of double down and do better myself. I'm really so glad that you came on the show. Like the things you talk about make a lot of sense and are aligned with what we talk about. And I appreciate you talking a little more about the science of it, the psychology of it. I've learned a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it here.
We hope you're enjoying the show, and we hope you're finding ways to foster wellness in the categories that are important to you. If you like what you're hearing, head to our website, letsbewelltogether.com, and then to the archives page. It includes a quick summary of the different segments of all of our shows back to the start. Have a look and see if there's something interesting you want to listen to, and listen to one of our past episodes.
It's me. Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Can't remember if we talked about this before, but it's an important topic, so let's come back to it.
Okay.
I'm going to call it going with the flow.
I love going with the flow.
Lessons we've learned in our life, our relationship, is it's a good thing. So I'll give you an example. I grew up camping. I like camping.
Right.
I've been to Algonquin. I've been camping with the family, sleeping in a tent, cooking on a fire, that coffee over a pot, that type of stuff. You went camping with it. We did that once when our kids were young. You hated it.
Hated it.
Right. So
never went camping as a kid.
So the choice at that point is I can keep trying to twist your arm into liking camping, or go with the flow and not do that and find something else. I think sometimes you try and say, hey, give it another try. And sometimes you can just tell the person hates it so much that, and I just feel like in relationships, it's a big part of it, the learning curve of what the person likes and doesn't like. And when you just go with the flow and not try and twist arms.
Right. And I love going with the flow. I'm not really as organized as you are.
Let's be careful, because maybe going with the flow isn't the right way to say it.
Okay.
Going with the flow means let's do it. What I'm talking about is something a bit different, which is not forcing an issue. Like go with it, changing the course of the river type thing. So why don't we say that? Change the course of the river if the other person doesn't love it.
No, I get that. And I really didn't like camping when we went, but I was thinking that maybe we should try just the two of us, because it was hard because we had 3 kids. So we had to bring a lot of stuff, because now with grandchildren, we realize that kids come with a lot of things. And so for me, it was just unloading and loading and organizing and prepping. I felt like there was a lot of work in camping.
I think I was thinking about it actually a little while ago. And one way to do it is to change the way the trip goes. Because here's a couple things you really didn't like about camping. One, how to cook. And especially with a whole family, cooking and then trying to clean up the pots with no hot water and trying to boil water to clean. And also you like to be clean. You don't like being out there with smoke and all that stuff.
Wearing the same clothes 3 days in a row, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
And if you go to the standard campsite, you're probably taking a shower in one of those like buildings in the middle, and they never feel that super. No. To me, they're fine, but if you're really into being clean, maybe that's not great. So what about this? What if we did a canoe trip to Algonquin, just the two of us, and that means every night, and I make sure that I could make coffee, because that's important.
Yes.
So we have some physical exercise because we're canoeing, and there's some beautiful places where it's pretty isolated. But the thing is, especially if the weather's nice, every day you can go for a swim in clean water.
Exactly. Oh, that would be beautiful. Like just if we bring natural soap too, you can actually bathe in the water and the water's warm. Exactly. So you'd have to pick a time that
you wouldn't be in the middle of a campground like with trees and no water and having to take a shower in the thing. And so maybe there is a way to do it.
And when Mike Keenuppa was on it, talking about canoeing and how he goes in the middle of nowhere and there's no people, no lights, I would love that. There was being like out in the middle of nowhere, kind of being on your own and having to do everything yourself, but also the stars and the darkness.
The stars are so much brighter when you're not around a city.
Yeah. So I would love to try that again.
Okay, but we're turning this into a canoe trip.
Yeah.
But what are some other examples relationship-wise where you kind of have to change the course of the river a bit?
I think there's a lot of things in relationships that you change your course, jobs.
Yeah, I just think there's so many times, you're right, I'm having a hard time coming up with quick ideas, but there's so many times where I'm like, no, she doesn't like that, we're not going to do that. Whether it's restaurants, whether it's vacations, whether it's, I don't know, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's lots of things, like even just
TV shows or even just what we do.
Or food, for health reasons, you have to change your food or you change your job, or there's a lot of things that you change in your relationship and that you have to go with the flow.
Even just being in the house, like what do you do after dinner or before dinner or when you wake up on a Sunday morning, there's things you don't like, and you kind of eventually get into this groove where you both kind of know what the other likes and doesn't like.
It's not just in relationships that you have to change course or go with the flow. I feel like in life, you have to change, or you do change your lifestyle, your sleeping habits, maybe for health reasons. And you have to go with the flow, and with a relationship together, change. I feel like we have changed quite a bit from when we were younger.
You realize that you have priorities, and eventually to the point where you make big changes. Like, for example, your job. You eventually decided, I want a job where I work during the day and I have my nights off, because for so many years you worked at night when I was working during the day.
Yes. And so we weren't together. And now I'd like to spend more time together.
Right.
And with that, it's changed my lifestyle. We've had to go to bed earlier and we wake up a lot earlier. And
the more we talk about it, we could probably keep talking.
Mm-hmm.
Where we were going was, it really is interesting in relationships how you realize things about the other person and change course a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think more about it, now we're getting into how it works in our whole life.
Yeah.
So interesting. Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. It's Sheila here with John.
John is here.
Hi.
Hey.
I hope everyone had a great Mother's Day out there. If you have a mother or you are a mother, you had a great time. It was beautiful weather. I had a fabulous Mother's Day. And just like last week, how I was saying that I'd like to do something productive and then do some social time and then work on food and eating. I did that this week as well. We actually went up to Owen Sound and put up a shed. That was our difficult thing. And it takes 5 or 6 hours to do. And it took us like 12.
Yeah, but we just kind of tinkered throughout the day.
Yes, true. Because we had to kind of work and not work. And we had the baby and stuff. But still, we got that done. And that was a job that I really wanted to get done. So that was one. And socially, Mother's Day, I got to see the kids. I took my mom out for brunch. We did some shopping. It was just a really lovely weekend. So I really enjoyed that. And then my son and his girlfriend came over and cooked for us. So that's the first time that happened. And that was fabulous. It's nice that they get to that age where they start cooking for you. It's like, yeah. So that is what's new with me. What about you, John?
Yeah, really busy week. Lots of fun. That was a great dinner too. I really enjoyed that a lot. It always tastes better when someone else cooks. Yeah, so much going on. You know, we're getting spring stuff done. We're opening the pool. I got to put the tent up in the backyard.
Yes.
It's kind of an awning thing. I'm really getting back into exercise and I'm starting to feel better. So that's making me happy. I'm a little burnt out though. I've got too many things going on, including it's 8:41 and I'm still editing
to get the podcast together.
Pieces of the podcast that I have to get up in the next 2 hours or so to drop tomorrow morning. But all good. So lots going on, really busy. Spring has sprung and off we go.
Mm-hmm. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.